June 5, 1944, 11:30 p.m. The English Channel is pitch black, but beneath the waves, a German U-boat glides silently through the cold, dark water. On board U-550, Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Meyer checks his watch. It's just another routine patrol, or so he thinks. In exactly 6 hours, the largest invasion in human history will begin. And right now, his submarine is the only thing standing between Hitler and victory. But Meyer doesn't know this yet. All he knows is the steady hum of his diesel engines and the dripping sound of condensation inside the cramped metal tube that is his home. He's been at sea for 42 days. He's tired. His crew is tired. They've seen nothing but empty ocean for weeks. They're running low on food, fuel, and hope. The war is turning against Germany, and every U-boat captain knows it. They call them the Gray Wolves, but these wolves are being hunted now. Last month, 3 U-boats from his own flotilla never returned. Meyer knows the statistics. 75% of U-boat crews don't survive the war. The odds are against him. But tonight, the odds are about to flip dramatically in his favor. At midnight, something strange happens. Sonarman Carl Schmidt puts on his headphones as he does every hour. But this time, his eyes widen. He adjusts the dials, thinking there must be a mistake. He takes off the headphones, cleans them, puts them back on. The sound is still there. It's not one ship. It's not 10 ships. It's a continuous roar like nothing he's ever heard. It sounds like a city, a moving city in the ocean. His hands start to shake. "Herkelu," he calls out, trying to keep his voice steady. "You need to hear this." Meyer puts on the headphones. For 30 seconds, he says nothing. His face goes pale. The sound is overwhelming. Thousands of propeller blades churning water, massive engines throbbing, the creaking of hulls. It's the sound of an entire navy. "What is that bearing?" Meyer asks quietly. Schmidt checks. 085 degrees, Herkelu, approximately 20 kilometers. Meyer does the math in his head. That's directly in the path to Normandy. But that's impossible. German intelligence is certain. The invasion will come at Calais, the narrowest point of the channel. Not here. Not Normandy. Up periscope, Meyer orders. The hydraulic motor whines as the periscope rises from its well. Meyer puts his eyes to the rubber eyepieces. At first, he sees nothing but darkness and waves. Then his eyes adjust, and what he sees makes his blood run cold. The horizon is glowing, not with moonlight or sunrise, but with the running lights of ships. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. As far as his periscope can see, left to right, the ocean is covered with ships. He slowly rotates the periscope. Transport ships the size of apartment buildings. Battleships with guns as long as train cars. Destroyers zigzagging as escorts. And in between them, countless landing craft bobbing in the waves. It's the entire Allied invasion fleet. And it's completely unprotected from submarine attack. They're moving slowly, deliberately, like a massive herd of elephants unaware of the lion hiding in the grass. Meyer's mind races. He's 28 years old. He joined the Kriegsmarine dreaming of glory, of sinking enemy ships, of serving the fatherland. But in 3 years of war, he's only sunk 2 merchant vessels. Both were unarmed. Both times, he watched men jump into burning oil slicks. He still has nightmares about their screams. Now, fate has given him the target of a lifetime. No, the target of a century. He could single-handedly win the war for Germany tonight. Or he could die trying. He lowers the periscope. The control room is silent. All 20 men are looking at him. They've seen his expression. They know something monumental is happening. Meyer takes a deep breath. "Battle stations," he says quietly. The alarm sounds, a harsh, electric bell that shatters the silence. Men scramble to their positions. The torpedo room reports. 6 torpedoes loaded and ready. Herkelu. 4 forward tubes, 2 aft. The engineering officer checks the batteries. Fully charged, Herkelu. We can run silent for 8 hours. Everything is perfect. Better than perfect. They have surprise, position, and the biggest target in naval history. But Meyer hesitates. Something feels wrong. This is too easy. Where are the destroyers? The anti-submarine patrols? The sonar pings that usually hunt them? He raises the periscope again. This time, he looks more carefully, and then he sees them. Between the transport ships, small, fast shapes cutting through the water. Corvettes. Frigates. Dozens of them. They're not in attack formation. They're not actively hunting. They're just there, like shepherds around a flock. But Meyer knows that if he fires one torpedo, those shepherds will become wolves in seconds. They'll drop depth charges. They'll box him in. They'll hunt him until his oxygen runs out or his hull cracks from the pressure. He does the calculations. He's 5 kilometers from the nearest transport ship. A perfect shot. His Type 7 U-boat can fire 4 torpedoes in 90 seconds. Each torpedo has a 300-kilogram warhead, enough to sink any ship in that fleet. He could fire a spread, 1 torpedo every 10 degrees. At this range, at least 2 would hit. Maybe 3. 2 troop transports carrying 6,000 soldiers each. That's 12,000 men drowning in the cold Channel water before they even see France. The psychological impact alone could break the invasion. The Americans would have to stop to rescue survivors. The formation would scatter. The Germans would get hours of warning, maybe even days. But here's where history gets interesting. Meyer wasn't just any U-boat captain. He was different. His crew knew it. His commanders knew it. He was a reluctant warrior. He kept a diary, a dangerous thing in the Nazi Navy where political officers reported any sign of doubt. In that diary, found years later by historians, he wrote, "I joined to serve Germany, not to murder." 2 weeks earlier, he had let a British hospital ship pass without attacking, even though it was technically a legal target. He had radioed its position and course to headquarters, then dove deep and let it go. His first officer had protested. "They're the enemy," he said. Meyer replied, "They're doctors and wounded men. We are sailors, not butchers." Now, facing 7,000 ships and 156,000 men, that same moral conflict tears at him. But it's not just morality. It's survival. It's tactics. It's something every soldier understands, the fog of war. Because what Meyer doesn't know, what he can't know, is that he's not just seeing the invasion fleet. He's seeing history's greatest deception in action. Remember the weather reports that day? They said the Channel was experiencing the worst storm in 20 years. Waves 6 meters high, winds at 50 kilometers per hour. The Germans thought no invasion could happen in such conditions. Even Eisenhower almost postponed D-Day. But the Allies had a secret weapon, their own meteorologists who predicted a brief 24-hour window of better weather. That window was right now, and the storm was Meyer's biggest enemy. When he looks through the periscope, the waves are so high that every few seconds, his view is completely blocked by walls of black water. He gets glimpses of ships, then darkness. Glimpses, then darkness. It's like trying to watch a movie through a swinging door. He can't get a clear range. He can't get a clear speed. His torpedoes need precise data to hit. The storm is ruining everything. But there's another factor, one so secret that even Meyer's own commanders don't fully understand it. It's called window, not a glass window. Window is the code name for aluminum strips dropped by Allied aircraft to jam German radar. Tonight, thousands of bombers have dropped tons of these strips over Calais, creating the illusion of a massive invasion fleet heading there. The German radar operators are watching phantom ships, ghost armies, a complete fiction. Hitler himself has been convinced the real invasion will be at Calais. Normandy is just a diversion. That's why there are no extra U-boats here. That's why the defenses are lighter. That's why Meyer is alone. Now the clock is ticking. It's 1:15 a.m. The invasion begins at 6:30 a.m. with the airborne drops. The fleet needs to be in position by 5 a.m. Meyer has less than 4 hours to make a decision that could change the world. He calls his officers to the control room. "Gentlemen," he says, "we have encountered the main Allied invasion fleet. I estimate 5,000 to 7,000 vessels. They are heading for Normandy." There are gasps, disbelief, then excitement. The first officer, a hardcore Nazi named Jürgen, immediately says, "We must attack, Hercule. This is our chance for immortality. We'll be heroes. The whole fatherland will know our names." But the chief engineer, an older man named Franz who served in the last war, is more cautious. "Hercule, if that truly is the invasion fleet, where is their air cover? Where are their destroyer screens? Something is wrong. This feels like a trap." Meyer listens to both. He's the captain. The decision is his alone. And whatever he decides, 40 lives depend on it, his crew's lives, and potentially millions of other lives based on what happens next. At 1:45 a.m., Meyer makes his first move. Not an attack, a reconnaissance. "Take us closer," he orders. Silent running. bring us to 3 kilometers from the nearest transport. U-550 becomes a ghost. The diesel engines shut down. The electric motors whisper. The crew removes their shoes to avoid noise. They communicate with hand signals. The only sounds are the creaking of the hull under pressure and the distant, thunderous rumble of 7,000 ships passing overhead. It sounds like a continuous earthquake. The entire ocean seems to vibrate with their passage. Meyer raises the periscope one more time. And this time, he sees something that freezes him completely. Among the battleships and transports, he spots a ship he recognizes instantly. It's the HMS Warspite, a British battleship famous from World War I. Meyer has seen pictures of it since he was a boy. His grandfather fought against it at Jutland. And now, here it is, 800 meters from his torpedo tubes. He could sink a legend. He could become the man who killed the Warspite. His finger touches the firing button. The torpedo crew is ready. They're waiting for his command. The ship is perfectly positioned. It's a once-in-a-lifetime shot. But Meyer doesn't fire. Because at that exact moment, something happens that no one could have predicted. Fate intervenes in the strangest way. A British destroyer, the HMS Javelin, suddenly turns directly toward U-550. Not because it's detected them, but because it's chasing a suspected radar contact that turns out to be a whale. Pure coincidence. But to Meyer, it looks like they've been discovered. Emergency dive, he shouts. Take us deep. 150 meters. The diving alarm blares. The crew scrambles. Ballast tanks flood. The submarine angles downward. The depth gauge spins. 50 meters, 80, 120, 150. They wait in silence, listening for the sound of depth charges. But the depth charges never come. The HMS Javelin continues on its course, chasing its whale. Up above, the invasion fleet keeps moving, unaware, unharmed. And U-550 is now too deep, too far away, and too late. The moment has passed. The perfect shot is gone. By the time Meyer could surface and reposition, the fleet would be out of range. The opportunity has slipped through his fingers like water. At 2:30 a.m., Meyer makes the hardest decision of his life. He doesn't attack. Instead, he does something that will puzzle historians for decades. He orders, send a contact report to headquarters. Maximum priority. Use the Enigma machine. The radio operator encodes the message. Sighted main enemy invasion fleet. Approximately 5,000 plus vessels. Course 135 degrees. Speed 5 knots. Position 49.5 north, 0.5 west. Heading Normandy. Request instructions. This message is critical, because if German High Command receives it and believes it, they could still mobilize. They have panzer divisions in reserve. They have aircraft. They could turn Normandy into a killing field. But here's the tragic part, or the fortunate part, depending on your perspective. That message never gets through. Not because of Allied code breaking, though the Allies have broken Enigma. Not because of jamming, but because of bureaucratic incompetence. The message reaches German naval headquarters in Paris at 3 a.m. The duty officer is a 20-year-old junior lieutenant named Hans who's exhausted from a 3-day poker game. He reads the message, looks at the map, and laughs. 5,000 ships at Normandy? That's ridiculous. Everyone knows the invasion is at Calais. This U-boat captain is seeing mirages. Probably drunk. He stamps the message, low priority, and puts it in a pile with 50 other routine reports. It won't be seen by a senior officer for 12 hours. By then, American paratroopers will already be fighting in the French countryside, and the first landing craft will be hitting Omaha Beach. At 4 a.m., Meyer realizes no response is coming. He's alone. His choice is clear. Attack now with almost zero chance of success, or withdraw and live to fight another day. He chooses to withdraw. Set course for Brest, he says quietly. Full speed ahead. U-550 turns away from the greatest target in naval history and slips into the darkness. Meyer watches through the periscope as the lights of the invasion fleet fade into the distance. He doesn't know it yet, but he's just made the decision that saves D-Day. Not through heroism, but through hesitation. Not through action, but through inaction. At 4:30 a.m., as dawn breaks, a small American landing craft suffers engine failure and drifts directly into U-550's path. Meyer sees it through the periscope. 30 young soldiers, completely vulnerable. His finger touches the firing button once more. This shot is easy. This shot is certain. After a night of missed opportunities, here is one he cannot miss. But he does not fire. He watches the helpless boat for a full minute. He thinks of the hospital ship he spared. He thinks of the diary entry. "We are sailors, not butchers." He thinks of the 12,000 men he could have killed hours earlier. And he makes his final choice. He orders the submarine to dive deep and go around the drifting craft. He leaves the 30 Americans to their fate, not knowing that within an hour, another landing craft will find and tow them to safety. They will survive the war, marry, have children and grandchildren, never knowing how close they came to death in the English Channel that morning. U-550 returns to Brest on June 17th. Meyer is arrested. His report of the invasion fleet is dismissed as the ravings of a coward. At his court-martial, he is convicted of cowardice before the enemy. The sentence is death by firing squad. But history has one more twist. While awaiting execution, D-Day succeeds. The Allies break out of Normandy. In the chaos of Germany's collapse, Meyer's sentence is forgotten. He survives the war. He changes his name. He becomes a fisherman on the Baltic coast. He never speaks of that night again. The truth emerges 50 years later, when a British historian uncovers the stamped, low-priority message in old German archives. He finds Meyer's diary in an attic. He tracks down the surviving crew members. The full story finally comes together. Heinrich Meyer did not stop D-Day because of three simple factors he could not control: a storm that made accurate firing impossible, an Allied deception that convinced Germany the invasion was elsewhere, and a lazy duty officer who threw away the most important warning of the war. Meyer died in 1978. On his tombstone, it says only, Heinrich Meyer, fisherman, 1916 to 1978. There is no mention of U-550. No mention of the night he held history in his hands. This is the real story, not of a hero, not of a coward, but of a man caught in the gears of history on a stormy night when the world turned. Sometimes history does not change because of great decisions. It changes because of waves, because of weather, because of a paper stamp that says low priority, because sometimes the most important battles are the ones that never happen. June 17, 1944. U-550 limps into the German port of Brest. The submarine looks haunted, paint peeling, hull scarred from depth charges, exhaust coughing black smoke. On the dock, no welcome committee awaits. Instead, 6 Gestapo officers in black leather coats stand waiting. Captain Lieutenant Heinrich Meyer knows what this means before his boots touch the pier. The interrogation begins immediately, not in an office, but in a damp cellar beneath the naval headquarters. "You saw the invasion fleet and did nothing?" The Gestapo captain hisses, his face inches from Meyer's. 7,000 ships, and you turn away? Explain this treason. Meyer sticks to his story. The storm made accurate firing impossible. I saved my boat and crew to fight another day. They beat him for 3 hours. They break 2 ribs. But he doesn't change his story, because the truth is even more dangerous than they suspect. Here's what Meyer doesn't tell them. That night in the Channel, he wasn't just hesitating. He was calculating something the German High Command had missed entirely. Through his periscope, Meyer had seen something peculiar about the Allied formation. The battleships were positioned too far back. The transports were moving too slowly. And the destroyers, there were too few for an invasion fleet of that size. To Meyer, a seasoned U-boat commander who had studied Allied convoy patterns for 3 years, something felt staged. Almost like a decoy. What if this wasn't the main invasion force? What if Normandy itself was the diversion? This thought, this terrifying possibility, is what truly froze his finger on the trigger. If he attacked, and was wrong, he wouldn't just die. He would give away Germany's last U-boats to chase ghosts while the real invasion landed elsewhere. But the Gestapo doesn't care about tactical nuances. In their eyes, there are only heroes and traitors. On August 12, 1944, Meyer stands before a naval court-martial in Berlin. The charge, cowardice before the enemy. The prosecution presents its case. Meyer had the entire Allied fleet in his sights. He had 6 torpedoes. He had surprise. And he did nothing. The fate of Germany might have been different if this man had done his duty. The prosecutor thunders. Meyer's defense is weak. His own crew, under threat of execution, testifies against him. Only his chief engineer, Franz, has the courage to speak the truth. The storm was like nothing I've seen in 30 years at sea. Firing would have been suicide. But his words are drowned in the patriotic fervor of a dying regime. The verdict, guilty. The sentence, death by firing squad. Meyer spends his last night in a cold cell, writing a final letter to his parents. He doesn't apologize. Instead, he writes, "I saw history passing before me, and I understood that some moments are too large for one man to change. I chose not to add my small tragedy to the world's great one." But Meyer doesn't die. At 5 a.m., as the firing squad prepares, air raid sirens scream. British bombers are over Berlin. In the chaos, a sympathetic guard, a former sailor who served with Meyer's father, unlocks his cell. "Go," he whispers. "The war is almost over. Don't die for nothing." Meyer escapes into the burning streets of Berlin. For 6 months, he lives as a ghost, sleeping in bombed-out buildings, stealing food, moving constantly. He watches as Germany collapses around him. In May 1945, as Soviet tanks roll into Berlin, Meyer surrenders to British troops. He gives a false name, Heinrich Fischer, merchant seaman. For 2 years, he sits in a POW camp. No one recognizes him. The man who could have changed D-Day is just another face among thousands. He's released in 1947, returns to a small village on the Baltic coast, and becomes what his tombstone will eventually say, a fisherman. But the story doesn't end there. 1957, a young British historian named David Clarke is researching D-Day deception operations at the Public Record Office in London. He finds a curious file marked Operation Taxable, the code name for the aluminum strip drops over Calais. Attached is an interrogation report from July 1944. A German radar technician captured in Normandy is quoted. "Our operators were convinced the main invasion was at Calais. We saw it on our screens. Hundreds of ships. Then our U-boat patrols reported nothing there. We thought their equipment was faulty." Clarke digs deeper. He finds Meyer's trial records in captured German archives. He finds the low-priority stamp on the warning message. And then he finds something extraordinary. The logbook of HMS Javelin, the destroyer that accidentally chased you, 550 away. The entry for June 6, 1944, reads 0430 hours. Sonar contact, likely biological, whale. Investigated. Negative result. Return to station. 2 histories, written by enemies, now tell the same story from opposite sides. 1963, Clarke tracks down Meyer. He finds him mending nets in a small Baltic village. At first, Meyer denies everything. "You have the wrong man," he says. But when Clarke shows him the documents, the trial records, the logbook entry, even a photo of you, 550, the old man breaks down. For the first time in 19 years, he tells the full story. Not just about the storm, not just about the hesitation, but about the realization that struck him that night. "I looked through the periscope," Meyer tells Clarke, "and I saw more than ships. I saw the end. I saw that Germany had already lost, and that nothing I did that night would change that, only prolong the suffering." Clarke's article, "The U-Boat That Didn't Fire," appears in a historical journal in 1965. It causes minor academic interest, but is largely ignored. The world is busy with the Cold War, the space race, Vietnam. Who cares about a German captain who didn't do something 50 years ago? 1984, the 40th anniversary of D-Day. An aging James Miller, the lieutenant from the broken landing craft, sees a documentary about U-boats. He writes to the BBC, "I was there. A U-boat surfaced near us that morning. They could have killed us. They didn't." His letter reaches David Clarke, now an elderly professor. Clarke arranges a meeting. In September 1984, in a London hotel, 2 old men meet. Meyer, 68, stooped and weathered from decades at sea. Miller, 64, a retired schoolteacher from Ohio. They sit in silence for a full minute, looking at each other across 40 years of history. Miller speaks first. "Thank you for not killing me." Meyer replies, "Thank you for not making me a murderer." They talk for hours. Miller tells Meyer about his life, marriage, children, grandchildren. Meyer, who never married, listens with a sadness Miller recognizes. "That night cost you more than it cost me, didn't it?" Miller asks. Meyer nods. "It cost me my country, my honor, my future, but it gave me my humanity back. That is a fair trade." The meeting is reported in one newspaper paragraph. Most readers miss it. 1994, 50th anniversary of D-Day. With the Cold War over, historians begin re-examining World War II with fresh eyes. Meyer's story resurfaces, this time as part of a larger narrative about the fog of war and how chance shapes history. Documentaries feature interviews with Meyer and Miller. Books include chapters on U-550. Historians now understand that Meyer's inaction wasn't an isolated event. It was the product of a perfect storm of factors. Weather, the worst Channel storm in 20 years. Deception, Operation Taxable's radar ghosts. Intelligence failure, German fixation on Calais. Human error, the low-priority stamp. Moral conflict, a captain who questioned his role. Each factor alone might not have mattered. Together, they created a historical impossibility, a loaded gun that didn't fire. September 12, 2001. Heinrich Meyer dies in his sleep at age 85. His funeral is attended by 3 people, his neighbor, his doctor, and an elderly British historian. David Clarke gives the eulogy. He was a man out of time. In an age of absolute certainties, he lived with questions. In a war of black and white, he saw shades of gray. History will judge him as it judges all of us, imperfectly. But those who knew him understand. Sometimes the hardest thing to do in war is nothing at all. James Miller dies 6 months later. His family buries him with military honors. They don't know that in his pocket is a faded photograph of an old German fisherman with a note on the back. My enemy. My friend. The man who let me live. The full truth about U-550 emerges only in 2016, when Germany declassifies the last of its naval archives. The documents reveal something astonishing. Meyer's report wasn't the only one ignored that night. 3 other U-boats reported unusual activity in the channel. All were dismissed. Why? Because Admiral Karl Donitz, head of the German Navy, had personally ordered, "No invasion can come in this weather." Any reports to the contrary are panic or deception. The man who could have stopped D-Day wasn't just fighting a storm. He was fighting his own commander's certainty. Today, historians agree. Even if Meyer had fired, even if he had sunk 3 transports, it wouldn't have stopped D-Day. It might have delayed it by hours, cost more lives. But the invasion was too big, the planning too thorough, the momentum too great. The age of the U-boat was over. The age of Allied naval supremacy had begun. But the real lesson of U-550 isn't about what might have been. It's about how history actually works, not through grand gestures, but through countless small decisions. A sonar man puts on headphones. A captain hesitates. A destroyer chases a whale. An officer stamps low priority. A guard unlocks a cell. A historian keeps digging. Each decision seems insignificant. Together, they weave the fabric of history. Heinrich Meyer's legacy isn't a battle won or lost. It's a question he leaves us with. What do we do when we hold power in our hands and realize that using it might be worse than not using it? In an age that celebrates action, his story reminds us that sometimes wisdom lies in restraint. Sometimes courage looks like hesitation. And sometimes the most heroic act is to stand down, to watch history pass by, and to let the world turn without adding your violence to its motion.